Thanks to everyone for being here. I want to begin by remarking on the action that my home state has just taken, our Rhode Island General Assembly, as it's preparing to pass the final big budget bill that is the conclusion of the legislative year, has just banned large capacity magazines, has just raised the age to 21 to buy firearms or ammunition, and has just banned open carry of loaded rifles and shotguns, which seem like pretty reasonable interventions. I believe there are actually gun clubs with ranges where the range safety officer won't let you use a large capacity magazine, so that seems like a pretty reasonable accommodation. We don't allow people under 21 to buy a beer, so why they need to buy firearms and ammunition is a little hard to explain, particularly in the wake of what we've seen recently. And for the life of me, I can't imagine, as a gun owner myself, why you need to open carry a loaded long gun around in this society. So I think we're seeing some signs of progress at the state level. I wanted to ask Chief Williams. I've spent a lot of years as a prosecutor involved with domestic violence. And one of the things we learned in the domestic violence context is the impact on young people simply of being witness to domestic violence in the home. I see you nodding. We've learned a lot about that. Our domestic violence community has developed, I think, very good interventions for that. Could you tell me what you think the lessons are that we learned in the domestic violence context from children who are witness to violence, domestic violence at home, for the children who are witness to even more ghastly demonstrations of violence in their schools with these massacres in which the damage to their classmates and friends is so great that DNA is required to identify the remains?
So, Senator, thank you for that question. As we all know, domestic violence plays a role in everything that we all do, from local law enforcement to what you all do here. Children seeing trauma, children normalizing trauma, children witnessing trauma, I'm sure the doctor would say this also, creates this vicious cycle of violence where that child believes that is the norm. And so we as a society owe it to them to, as was previously mentioned, providing those services to those kids early and quickly and consistently. It shouldn't be a one-stop shop where you go in for care and then all of a sudden you're healed, because that doesn't happen. As far as the violence in school, we know that violence happens in school. It's obvious, it's evident. We need to provide those resources from a trauma-informed standpoint also to the students, as well as the parents, as well as the educators. Thank you for the question.
And Doctor, I wanted to go to you with the same question. You obviously in emergency rooms see the children who are brought in whose bodies have been torn apart by these weapons and the ammunition that they discharge. But that leaves all of their classmates who were not physically injured. What are your recommendations and advice to this committee regarding what sort of impact what they have witnessed has on the classmates who were not physically injured, and what we need to do to provide supports for those kids and for their families?
Thank you for that question. Thank you for that question, Senator Whitehouse. We know the impact of trauma on the brain of any kind, some worse than others. And we know after children have witnessed horrific events like shootings or other horrific events that they live with on a day-by-day basis, like interpersonal violence, that the back part of the brain, the limbic system, goes on hyper alert and kind of trains the brain to always scan for danger. They become hyper vigilant. They become very frightened. They sometimes erupt very quickly because the front part of the brain, which helps us to make judgment and rational decisions, is less well-functioning after trauma. We also know that there are ways to help children, and there are numerous evidence-based trauma-informed mental health interventions that we can use to support families in supporting their children and providing therapy to children. Thank you.
My time has expired. Thank you very much, Chairman.